Good afternoon. I'm just going to give attendees a couple of more minutes to join this afternoon's webinar, and I will be back with you very shortly. Thank you for your patience. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining this afternoon's webinar. My name is Sherry Betancourt, and I'm the account executive for the Encore Products Division at Encore Business. This afternoon, we are going to spend a little bit of time reviewing our subscription billing solution from Microsoft Dynamics GP. Subscription billing will automate the creation of quotes, orders, or invoices in the Dynamics GP sales order processing module. It integrates very tightly with that module, so it leverages the setups within the sales order processing and receivables management modules within GP, so it's a very easy add-on if you're already set up and using GP. Subscription billing will allow you a way to set up a contract for your clients that you will be billing on a recurring basis. So you might have multiple line items on that customer's contract. They may be service items or miscellaneous type items or inventory items, or maybe they're just items that you're entering on the fly on your subscription billing contract for your customers. Each of those lines may have a different next bill date. They may also have a different billing frequency. Some of those lines you might be using the GP revenue and expense deferral module to recognize revenue over future periods. It also works with the EFT for receivables module. So if you have ACH banking information set up for your customers on the subscription billing contract, you can flag that contract to use the EFT for receivables module so that the batch of ACH transactions will be created at the same time that the sales transactions are created. We have added support for the notice credit card solution. So if you are using that solution and you have a credit card on file, you can flag the subscription billing contract to use a customer credit card. So the batch of credit card transactions will be created at the same time. Also works with the k-ecommerce credit card solution. It will grab the default credit card set up for that customer. Works with the Avalara AvaTax, which is also a very popular add-on for customers using GP. So if you are using that solution, the appropriate sales tax will be added to the sales transaction. We call the Avalara AvaTax triggers at the time of creating the sales transactions to grab the appropriate sales tax. And we've also added solution or support for the Wolters Kluwer CCH sales tax office, as well as other ISV solutions. So if you're using something that I don't have listed here that works with your sales order processing module within GP, on the last slide, I have my contact information. So please feel free to reach out, and I can let you know if we have tested our subscription billing with that solution. So I'm going to move over into the demo at this point. Subscription billing has actually quite a few features and functionality that have been added in recent years. More and more clients are adopting a recurring revenue stream in addition to their more traditional revenue streams. So as we talk to our clients and how they're handling their recurring revenue, this product has certainly evolved in the past few years with quite a few new features and functionality. So the setup window is really only a couple of required fields. On the contract tab, you need to assign a next contract number, and on the billing tab, process hold ID, but I'm going to talk about some of the features available to you. So next contract number is required so that when you open the subscription billing contract entry window, something defaults in, you can certainly override this. A lot of our customers were using the customer ID as the next contract number. So this was recently added where you can select that you're going to use the customer ID instead. And then the first field that you're going to look up will be your customer ID from your receivables management customer list. And then if you have this option selected, you can select what is the suffix number format that you're going to use. So you can put like 001. So the first time you select that customer, their contract number will be customer ID with a 001. The next time, if you create a new contract for that customer, it'll append with a 002. Enable rollback is a feature within subscription billing that will undo the batch creation out of subscription billing. So if you create a batch of documents in sales transaction entry and you discover an error after the fact, maybe you wanted to update pricing or you wanted to add lines to your contracts. And so if you created that document, it would be very cumbersome to have to go into each of those transactions and update the sales transaction after the fact. So with the rollback feature turned on, you can delete or void a single document or the entire batch, and it will put everything back to subscription billing where you can make the changes on your customer's contract and then regenerate the transactions in sales transaction entry. Subscription billing comes with an optional add-on importer that will, if you're updating contracts on a recurring basis, then that importer will save you a ton of time. We've created the smart list objects out of subscription billing so you can dump all your data out into Excel, make the changes, and then import it back in, or just have templates of the information that you're updating on a recurring basis, and using the importer will save you a ton of time. And then we also have a couple of other shortcuts within subscription billing so that you can update contracts en masse instead of individually. Allow multiple invoicing is a relatively new feature added. We had customers who were billing on very short billing cycles, maybe weekly, or some that were even billing on a daily basis. Subscription billing wouldn't allow you to roll back, or pardon me, wouldn't allow you to create the next document in sales order processing if the previous document hadn't already been created. So we'll now allow that, so you can create, your weekly invoices within sales order processing, but if you want to roll back one of those documents, we will only roll back one billing cycle. So if you're wanting to roll back further, then you would just need to go back into your contract and update your next bill date. So that's what that new feature is. Enable line consolidation for services and non-inventory items on the SOP document. This was a feature added by one of our clients via cost share development initiative. They wanted to be able to enter the detail on the customer contract, but then define which line is going to be presented on the invoice. So let's say you had something like a gold plan that was made up of X number of hours of support and X number of hours of training. And so when the invoice is presented to the customer is just going to see gold plan, but you want to be able to see what the detail is. Maybe you have different revenue accounts for support as you would for training. So when you set up your customer's contract, you would just enter a line item for gold plan and then link the detail lines to it. So you would have, 50 hours for support, 25 hours for training. Each of those lines may be assigned a different revenue account, but when the document's created in sales transaction entry, it's going to have gold plan. And if you go into the GP distribution window, it will be broken out with the two different revenue lines, one each for the support and one for the training. Synchronized changes to contracts from customer card. Do you never want to do that? Do you always want to do that, or do you want to ask each time? My preference would be ask each time. If I went into the customer card and I made a change, when I click save on the customer card, it's going to alert me, says you have contracts set up for this customer? Do you want to roll those changes down? It'll tell you which changes are going to roll down potentially. Do you want to roll them down to your customer's contracts? Yes or no? Same feature exists for item card changes. So if you're using item cards within GP, it might be either inventory or service or miscellaneous or whatever type of items you have on an item card, you want that information to roll down. And then I'll talk about the subscription billing line item defaults as we get a little bit further into the demo. Enable end of contract life when deleting or voiding or returning documents. This is basically if let's just say you're creating a batch of documents for everybody that you're billing this month. At the end of the month, some of those documents, for whatever reason, you need to delete or void them. Maybe the customer is ending their agreement with you. What do you want to happen to the customer contract? Do you want to roll, what it will do is it'll roll it back, but do you want to inactivate the line item, meaning that you're not going to bill for that item again, or do you want to expire the lines? Basically, it's the same. Inactivating or expired is really the same end result. It's not going to bill for that item again, but what's it going to look like on the customer's contract? And we'll look at that as we get further into the demo. Enable multiple contract consolidation. Most of the time, you're going to be able to handle all of your customers' billing requirements on a single contract. Like you may have multiple lines, some of them are inventory, some are non-inventory, some lines you're going to defer revenue, other lines you're not. But some customers in their business, they want to be able to set up multiple contracts for the same customer. So with the enable multiple contract consolidation, what will happen is you will link those contracts together, create a parent-child relationship between those contracts, and at the time of running the billing, it will look at all of those contracts that have been linked together and determine what's due to be billed based on the next bill date. So it's going to pull the lines off of those contracts and consolidate it all onto a single sales transaction in sales order processing. On the billing tab, you're going to just enter or select, a process hold ID for the credit limit. So these are the process hold IDs that you have set up in GP. You just need to select one of those. Passwords. So on the customer card in GP, you can place a customer on hold or you can mark them as inactive. And on the item cards, you have the ability to mark an item as discontinued. So you could have contracts for those customers or those items. So to continue to create the sales transactions, you'll be prompted for a password here. Now, document type, as I mentioned, we create quotes, orders, or invoices in sales order processing. You can set some defaults. Here, when I open up the document creation and sales order processing, because I have selected the document type of invoice, it's just going to default to that. And which document type do I want to create? And again, these are just the sales transaction entry, the different invoice types that I have created there. So I would just select which one I want to default. Return type ID, again, just select the return document type that you have set up in GP. And I'm going to show you the return process. This is a relatively new feature in subscription billing. Now, as I mentioned, we use the revenue expense deferral module in GP if you want to recognize revenue over future periods. So I'm just going to open up that window so I can talk a little bit about the functionality that we are looking at. So this is a GP revenue and expense deferral setup window. Now, GP has 3 different calculation methods: days in period, equal per period, or miscellaneous. We support the first 2. So by default, we're going to, if you're going to tag a line item to use the revenue expense deferral module, by default, we're going to select whatever is here, but at the contract, you can select one of the, again, only the first 2 are available to you. We look at the setting here of auto post into closed future GL periods, auto post into closed previous GL periods, and then the sales series posting method. Again, the functionality is not ours, so GP just creates the entries a little bit differently depending on the balance sheet or the profit and loss. So those are basically the settings that we're looking at. Now, sometimes you might be finding yourself that you're billing in arrears. So let's just say now we're into November. My October batch was created, but I forgot to set up the contract for somebody that should have been billed in October. If October is closed and I have the setting here that will not allow me to post into previous GL periods, GP won't be able to create that revenue recognition entry for October, because we're not going to allow posting into closed previous GL periods. If I had this set to yes, no problem, it'll create it into October. But because I have the setting no and not allow it, that October entry needs to be created somewhere. So you can turn the setting on here. If the period is closed, it will look into the first open period. So if it finds that October is closed, November is open, it's going to create the revenue recognition entry for October and for November in the November period. We also have provided the ability to prorate. So if you're adding customer contracts with a start date, of today, which is mid-cycle, and you're going to bill them regularly on the first of the month, you can mark that line to prorate. So it does that first billing is going to be a catch-up billing. And how do you want to prorate the time period, either based on days or by months? And how do you want the rounding to be handled? This is a really nice feature here, item description plus billing date. So there's a couple of options here. This would be my preference here, the one that I have flagged. We'll talk about what a service date is when we look at the contract. But if you're billing your customers, let's say on a monthly billing cycle for item ABC, and I'm creating my documents in sales order processing, it's going to append the item description with the billing date. So let's just say it is today, November the 12th. And this is their regular billing cycle, the 12th of each month. It's going to create the transaction in sales order processing. It's going to say item ABC, November the 12th, 2019 to December the 11th, 2019. So the customer knows exactly what billing period that line is being billed for. So that's it for the setup. I know I talked about a lot of the other functionality, but really the only required fields are the two. So if you're interested in talking a little bit more and getting a little bit deeper on some of the features, please reach out to me. So once we've completed the setup, we can create our contracts. So you see when I open the window that my contract number has defaulted. This field is not locked, so I can override it. If I wanted to, I'm just going to select a customer from my receivables management customer list. When I do so, a lot of information is populated in this window. It's coming from the customer card. Really setting up a subscription billing contract is not really any more difficult than entering in that sales transaction one time in sales order processing. There's 3 tabs. General tab, this is a lot of the header information that will populate your sales transactions. Contract class is an optional field, but it's a way to group contracts together. So it's not necessary that you use the contract class, but if you have, different people responsible for billing different, products or services, or for different billing units, then contract class is one way to group those similar contracts together. Fully multi-currency functional, so by default, the currency assigned to your customer card will default in, but if you want to bill them in a different currency, you can just use a lookup and select a different currency. All this is either coming from the customer card or the sales order processing or receivables management setup. Now, you can select a different document type. So if you recall in the setup window, I said that I'm going to be creating mostly invoices, standard invoice type, but maybe you have a customer that is going to have a different document type. You can define something at the customer's contract, and that will override what was selected in the setup window. So maybe you have a customer that says, don't ever send me an invoice off the bat, send me a quote first. And so you might have a combination of different sales transaction types all within a single batch when you create out a subscription billing. This is where you would select if you had the EFT for receivables and you had ACH information, you would select, the EFT active. If you had the Notice credit card solution installed, then Notice would show up here where you could select use Notice credit card, and then a companion window will open up and show you the credit cards that you have on file for that customer, so you can select which one you want to use. If you were grouping contracts together, this is where you would define that relationship. So you would select which is the parent contract, and is this the child or the parent, or is this the parent? So this is where you would define that relationship. On the line item tab, this is where we're going to add our line items that we're going to be billing for, and I'm just going to select something from what I have set up in GP here. So if I select something that exists on an item card and has item pricing assigned, when I select that item, the unit price will default in based on this customer's price level. Now, often you might be negotiating something different for your customer. So right now this field is locked. If I mark the CP checkbox, the unit price field becomes enabled. And so I'm going to just override that. And I will select a frequency that I'm going to bill this particular line item. We even have a user-defined number of days, user-defined number of months. We have a customer that's billing only once every 36 months, so they're using that user-defined number of months field. So I'm going to bill this one on an annual basis. I'm going to enter in today's date is the start date, and the next bill date, I'm going to bill this customer annually on the 1st of December. Now, if I want to prorate, so if we see this right now, it's the start date of November the 12th and the end date of November the 11th of next year. Now, if I want to capture the additional revenue, I can mark the prorate, and it's going to bill from November the 12th until November the 30th of next year. So we'll see the toggle, December the 1st to November the 30th, November the 12th to November 30th. Sorry, I hadn't tabbed off of that line. So when I first showed you that, that wasn't quite correct. So with the prorate turned on, it's going to capture the additional revenue from the November 11th. With prorate turned off, it's only going to capture the revenue from December the 1st. So I'm going to turn that prorating on. And I also want to defer the revenue and leverage the GP functionality. So when I select the checkbox, the calculation method of days and period is coming from the setup window. As I mentioned, I can override that to equal per period. The service date is the date that the revenue recognition is going to start, and it's going to recognize it over 12 periods. So if I didn't want to start the revenue recognition on that date, I can change this, and that will adjust the start date of the revenue recognition when the transaction is created in GP. Now we have some customers that are delaying the revenue recognition altogether. So they're invoicing for services that they're going to provide in the future, but they don't know when they're going to be providing those services. So they want to delay the revenue recognition until those services have been provided. So this is where we extend the GP functionality slightly. So this is for some of the new revenue recognition requirements. This would help meeting that requirement where you can delay the revenue recognition and post the transaction, and this line item will populate in an interim window that we have within subscription billing so that when those services have been provided, you can go in and kick off that revenue recognition. So I'm just going to accept this service date. You know, if I didn't want it over 12 periods, I could change this. Maybe I just want it over 2 or whatever the case may be. So, you know, you can play around a little bit with how that revenue recognition is going to happen on this line item. So this is line item specific. Each line item might be doing something different. And I'm just going to add a second line item here. And we'll put this one in. Just want to make sure I grab something different. So as I mentioned, it can exist on an item card, or it could just be something, I can just type something in on the fly. And we'll put this one in for $50 and monthly, and let's also capture that additional revenue. And we even have frequencies one time as well. So if you wanted to enter one-time line items on your customer's contract. So we've got 2 different line items, one annually, one monthly, one we're going to do further revenue recognition, the other we're not. You also have, before I skip forward to the next tab, you also have user-defined fields for each of the line items. And those user-defined labels are set up on the setup pane here. So if you have additional information that you want to store at the line item, we give you 2 text, 2 date, 2 checkbox, and 2 numeric fields. And on the user-defined tab, we also give you, these are header user-defined field labels. So at the header level, we give you 4 text, 4 date, 4 numeric, and 4 checkbox. And you also have access to the sales order processing user-defined field. So a lot of places to store information related to your contract and your contract line items. Okay, so normally you're going to go through a batch creation process, but I'm going to show you a couple of different ways I'm going to actually go through the different ways that you can create the documents in sales order processing. So I'm just going to save this now. So let's just say that this contract, I've created my batch, but this one got missed. So we can create a sales transaction right off a subscription billing contract. So if we click Instant Create, it's going to ask me, do you want to create the SOP document? Yes, I do. And so it's going to quickly just run through the process and create the document in sales transaction entry for me. And I'm in an image, so that's why it's considerably slower than you would be in your production environments, because everything, SQL Server and everything is installed on my laptop here. Okay, so it's been created for me. We see the proration. I had a $1,200 and $50, so the proration has happened as it should. Now, if I go into the distribution, this line was being prorated. So if I go up to deferral, we see that those deferrals entries, when I post this transaction, this is the deferral entries that are going to be created automatically for me. So every time every year when that line item is creating a sales transaction in sales order processing, this deferral entry will be created for me. But I am going to void this transaction. And it's asking me now, do you want to roll this back? And yes, I do. So it's going to put everything back onto my contract 138. So it's like nothing had happened here. So, you know, if this price should have been $1,300, not $1,200, I can make that change here. If I go into the document history, everything that I've created off of this customer's contract will populate the document history window. So we can see that I had created a document via the instant create, and that invoice number is such, and it was never posted, and it was ultimately voided. So normally the process would be, you would be going through the SOP document creation window, and you would be creating a batch of documents. So by default, it's an invoice, a standard invoice type, because that's what I had selected in my setup window, but I could create, you know, I can change this, I can override it. Billing due date, I'm going to put in my December 1st date, document date. Let's use the document date of the 12th, November the 12th, since that's today. Oops. And hit my tab button instead. And I'm just going to create a batch. This will be the batch in sales order processing that will contain the documents that have been created. And I lost my mouse. Get back on that screen. Bear with me. I seem to be having a connectivity issue here. Okay, there we go. Okay, and so there's the batch in sales order processing. Now I'm going to just use that contract class. I don't want to be, I have quite a few contracts out there that I'm just going to pull in that single one. So this would be the process if you were going through the batch creation process. So you would just put in your billing due date. So subscription billing will go and look at all of the contract and contract line items and look for anything that's due to be billed on December the 1st or earlier. So if it's a process that I'm only running once a month, and the last time I ran it was November the 1st, it will, in this scenario, pick up everything dated November the 2nd up until December the 1st. So it will look at all those line items, all those contracts, and then look at what ranges I've entered in here. So if I don't put any ranges, it'll look at everything. So fast create new, at this point, it's just parsed through. It's looked what's due to be billed based on the parameters I have set. I can look at a report. At this point, the sales transaction has not been created. Okay, so if I can look at a report here, I see contract 138 is going to create an invoice, and this is the subtotal of that invoice. If I discover an error at this point by looking either at the edit report or the detailed report, I can back out, go make a change on my contract, and then come back in and start over. But with the rollback, like once that document's created, you can simply delete or void it. So if I'm satisfied, I can just go ahead and create. It's created one document. We get a report of what has happened. So contract 138 has created invoice number 2585 and the document amount. If I click on transactions, it's going to take me to the first transaction in the batch. So again, I can go up to the distributions and see that my deferral entry is going to be created. So if I had multiple line items, it would show the multiple deferral entries that are being created for me. So I'm going to remove the batch here, and I'm just going to go ahead and post this one. And did I lose my mouse again? Here we go. I'm just going to bring up the general posting journal. This will show that those revenue recognition entries are being posted. And there they are, November, December, all the way through the 12 periods. Now let's go back and look at that contract again. And this time we see that my last bill date is populated of December the 1st. My annual billing line has advanced to December the 1st of next year, and my monthly billing line has advanced to the 1st of January. Now, if we go back into document history, we see this transaction has been posted and the amount remaining is $14.48. So this is a new feature that we've also added. So as you receive payments against this invoice, this will update. And once it's been fully paid, there's a little green flag that will appear here so that you know that it has been paid. And if you zoom in on the amount remaining, it's going to show you all of the cash receipts related to the payments received against that invoice. Now, if I wanted to process a return against this invoice that was created, I can go into this document history window to select process return, and the window pops up and it's showing me the two line items that I had invoiced. So maybe I just want to process a return for the single line. So it's very easy to create the return document here. It's going through a quick create here, and there is my return document for that line item. It's been assigned to a batch. We go back and refresh this window, and we see that I have a return that's unposted off of my standard invoice 2585. So we keep track of everything that's happening off of that contract for you. Now, a couple of the features that I want to show you is the importer. So the importer can be used for creating your contracts initially. It's a two-step process for creating new contracts, so you can do it from a file. I just have a simple file sitting out on my desktop, and I've mapped the fields that I'm importing to the file. So first step is to create the header information. I've created 3 header records. The next step would be to map the line items to those headers. So here I am, I've got a simple file out there. Everything that we can manually enter is available through the importer. So you can set, if you want it deferred, if you're overriding sales accounts, everything here is available through the importer. I use the importer every month. It saves me a ton of time. I've set up my templates. I use it for updating user-defined fields. So I've created smart lists where I dump it out, update the fields, and import it in. Some customers are dumping out everything, only changing what they want or what they need to and importing it back in. So importer will save a ton of time. It's an inexpensive add-on. You know, if you decided you know, subscription billing was the right solution for you and you wanted to evaluate the importer, we provide trial keys. We provide trial keys for all of our products. So you can even request trial keys for the subscription billing and the importer. And again, can be used for creating contracts and also updating contracts. So adding lines or changing anything on existing lines. I talked about the delay, the service date, and invoicing for services and not starting the revenue recognition. So if you had delayed the revenue recognition and posted those transactions, those line items will populate this window so that you can come in, select that line item at a future date and kick off that revenue recognition so that you're not recognizing revenue in advance of providing services. What is the other? They move things around on here every once in a while. Subscription billing contract line mass update. So if you wanted to update the line item, so as you recall, I marked the contract price checkbox and I overrode the price that defaulted in. And so if I wanted to change the price next year or, you know, next quarter or whatever the case may be, I would have to either override that price via the importer, or I would have to manually go into that contract and change the price, or I can use the contract price mass update window. So in this window, it's pulling in all items, and I can put some restrictions here. So maybe I just want to see, you know, a particular line item. It's showing me what is the current price for those line items. And if I wanted to do a percentage increase, or if I wanted to do a dollar amount increase, I would just put that into the header here. It's showing me what the current price is and what the proposed price will be if I execute on that change. And so I can just mark off which ones I want to update and then commit. And it's going to update anything that I commit within this window. And lastly would be the smart list. So as I mentioned, we have created the smart list objects for subscription billing. Now this looks a little bit different than your smart list. Encore has also developed a product called Advanced Smart List, which I'm going to talk about when I flip back to the PowerPoint presentation, because I have a special offer for you for attending today's webinar. But we have created all of the smart list objects for subscription billing. And I'm just going to go into, let's go contract detailed. Just going to pull up something I have here. So when the data is returned, you'll notice it looks a little bit different than with Smart List alone. With Advanced Smart List turned on, the data is presented in a grid format. So you can group different things that you can do with Advanced Smart List turned on. First of all, you can move your columns around. You can pull column headers up into the grouping section. So I can put multiple groupings. I can add functions. So I can do a lot of cool stuff with Advanced Smart List. And so once I've built this reformatted Smart List, I can save this as a favorite as well. So if I'm always running the same Smart List and sending it out to Excel and formatting in a certain way, I can save this in as a favorite Smart List, so it's available for me each time that I open it. So that concludes the demo portion. I'm just going to flip back to my PowerPoint presentation here. Just go over the pricing. Our pricing is based on a GP site license, so not user count. So subscription billing is $6,000 for the module. So if you increase your GP user count, your keys will continue to work for your Encore products. The optional importer is $900. Our annual maintenance is 20% of the list price, so that would be $1,200 and $180 for the two modules. That gives you unlimited support for the Encore product when the support is initiated through your reselling partner. But when customers come to us direct, we will not charge you for support. Typical implementation, including your end user training, is going to be less than 2 days. Sometimes we complete these in as little as 4 hours. It really depends on how complex your contracts are. As I mentioned, we do also provide trial keys. So if you want to do a 30-day trial with our products, I would highly recommend 2 to 4 hours of services, at least just to get you started, and so that you can properly evaluate the solution. So for joining today's webinar, I have a special offer. I'm going to follow up with an email to everybody in attendance, but you are entitled to a set of advanced smart list keys. So I will provide you with keys. Those keys will expire 1 year from the date that they are generated. And so anybody that's using Advanced Smart List or anybody that's using Smart List within your organization can leverage the functionality that Advanced Smart List provides. At the end of the year, the keys will just expire, the functionality will go away. But if you wish to continue to use Advanced Smart List, the purchase price of Advanced Smart List is $800 plus 20% annual maintenance. But if you end up purchasing the subscription billing module after sitting in on today's webinar, at the end of the 1 year, I will give you permanent keys for your Advanced Smart List. So you would just have to pay the annual maintenance of $180 to continue, $160 to continue using Advanced Smart List going forward. So that will all be detailed in the email that I follow up with after today's webinar. And so thank you for joining. And on this very last slide, I have all the different ways that you can get a hold of me. So probably pick one of the sales or support or reg keys at EncoreBusiness.com because that's a little bit shorter. And again, thank you for joining the webinar. I will follow up with an email and let you know how you can obtain your free keys for the Advanced Smart List product for attending. Thank you and have a great day.